Sahih al-Bukhari Virtues of Madinah. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Anas. The Prophet said, Medina is a sanctuary from that place to that. Its trees should not be cut and no heresy should be innovated nor any sin should be committed in it, and whoever innovates in it an heresy or commits sins, bad deeds, then he will incur the curse of Allah, the angels, and all the people. See Hadith number 409, Volume 9. Sahih al-Bukhari 1867 Reference 29 Hadith 1. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Anas. The Prophet came to Medina and ordered a mosque to be built and said, O Bani Najjar, suggest to me the price of your land. They said, we do not want its price except from Allah. That is, they wished for a reward from Allah for giving up their land freely. So, the Prophet ordered the graves of the pagans to be dug out and the land to be leveled, and the date palm trees to be cut down. The cut date palms were fixed in the direction of the Qibla of the mosque. Sahih al-Bukhari 1868 Reference 29 Hadith 2. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, I have made Medina a sanctuary between its two, Herat, mountains. The Prophet went to the tribe of Bani Haritha and said to them, I see that you have gone out of the sanctuary, but looking around, he added, no, you are inside the sanctuary. Sahih al-Bukhari 1869 Reference 29 Hadith 3. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Ali. We have nothing except the Book of Allah and this written paper from the Prophet, wherein is written smiley face. Medina is a sanctuary from the air mountain to such and such a place, and whoever innovates in it an heresy or commits a sin, or gives shelter to such an innovator in it will incur the curse of Allah, the angels, and all the people. None of his compulsory or optional good deeds of worship will be accepted. And the asylum of protection granted by any Muslim is to be secured, respected, by all the other Muslims. And whoever betrays a Muslim in this respect incurs the curse of Allah, the angels, and all the people, and none of his compulsory or optional good deeds of worship will be accepted. And whoever, freed slave, befriends, take as masters, other than his manumitters without their permission incurs the curse of Allah, the angels, and all the people, and none of his compulsory or optional good deeds of worship will be accepted. Sahih al-Bukhari 1870 Reference 29 Hadith 4. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, I was ordered to migrate to a town which will swallow, conquer, other towns and is called Yathrib, and that is Medina, and it turns out, bad persons as a furnace removes the impurities of iron. Sahih al-Bukhari 1871 Reference 29 Hadith 5. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Humayd. We came with the Prophet from Tabuk, and when we reached near Medina, the Prophet said, This is Taba. Sahih al-Bukhari 1872 Reference 29 Hadith 6. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Huraira. If I saw deers grazing in Medina, I would not chase them, for Allah's Messenger said, Medina is a sanctuary between its two mountains. Sahih al-Bukhari 1873 Reference 29 Hadith 7. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Huraira. I heard Allah's Messenger saying, the people will leave Medina in spite of the best state it will have, and none except the wild birds and the beasts of prey will live in it, and the last persons who will die will be two shepherds from the tribe of Muzayna, who will be driving their sheep towards Medina, but will find nobody in it, and when they reach the valley of Taniyat al-Wada, they will fall down on their faces dead. Sahih al-Bukhari 1874 Reference 29 Hadith 8. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Sufyan b. Abu Zuhair. I heard Allah's Messenger saying, Yemen will be conquered and some people will migrate from Medina, and will urge their families, and those who will obey them to migrate to Yemen, although Medina will be better for them, if they but knew. Sham will also be conquered and some people will migrate from Medina, and will urge their families and those who will obey them to migrate to Sham, although Medina will be better for them, if they but knew. Iraq will be conquered and some people will migrate from Medina, and will urge their families and those who will obey them to migrate to Iraq, although Medina will be better for them, if they but knew. Sahih al-Bukhari 1875 Reference 29 Hadith 9. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, Verily, belief returns and goes back to Medina as a snake returns and goes back to its hole, when in danger. Sahih al-Bukhari 1876 Reference 29 Hadith 10. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Sa'di. I heard the Prophet saying, None plots against the people of Medina but that he will be dissolved, destroyed, like the salt is dissolved in water. Sahih al-Bukhari 1877 Reference 29 Hadith 11. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Usama. Once the Prophet stood at the top of looked out from upon one castle amongst the castles, or the high buildings, of Medina and said, Do you see what I see? No doubt, I see the spots where afflictions will take place among your houses, and these afflictions will be as numerous as the spots where raindrops fall. Sahih al-Bukhari 1878 Reference 29 Hadith 12. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Bakr. The Prophet said, The terror caused by al-Masih ad-Dajjal will not enter Medina, and at that time Medina will have 7 gates and there will be 2 angels at each gate guarding them. Sahih al-Bukhari 1879 Reference 29 Hadith 13. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Huraira. Allah's Messenger said, There are angels guarding the entrances, or roads, of Medina. Neither plague nor ad-Dajjal will be able to enter it. Sahih al-Bukhari 1880 Reference 29 Hadith 14. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, There will be no town which ad-Dajjal will not enter except Mecca and Medina, and there will be no entrance, road, of both Mecca and Medina. But the angels will be standing in rows guarding it against him, and then Medina will shake with its inhabitants thrice. That is, 3 earthquakes will take place, and Allah will expel all the non-believers and the hypocrites from it. Sahih al-Bukhari 1881 Reference 29 Hadith 15. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. Allah's Messenger told us a long narrative about ad-Dajjal, and among the many things he mentioned, was his saying, Ad-Dajjal will come and it will be forbidden for him to pass through the entrances of Medina. He will land in some of the salty barren areas, outside Medina. On that day the best man or one of the best men will come up to him and say, I testify that you are the same Dajjal whose description was given to us by Allah's Messenger. Ad-Dajjal will say to the people, If I kill this man and bring him back to life again, will you doubt my claim? They will say, Number. Then ad-Dajjal will kill that man and bring him back to life. That man will say, Now I know your reality better than before. Ad-Dajjal will say, I want to kill him but I cannot. Sahih al-Bukhari 1882 Reference 29 Hadith 16. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Habir. A Bedouin came to the Prophet and gave a pledge of allegiance for embracing Islam. The next day he came with fever and said to the Prophet, "Please cancel my pledge of embracing Islam and of emigrating to Medina." The Prophet refused that request 3 times and said, "Medina is like a furnace. It expels out the impurities, bad persons, and selects the good ones and makes them perfect." Sahih al-Bukhari 1883 reference 29 Hadith 17. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Zayd bin Thabit. When the Prophet went out for the battle of Uhud, some of his companions, hypocrites, returned home. A party of the believers remarked that they would kill those hypocrites who had returned, but another party said that they would not kill them. So, this divine inspiration was revealed. Then what is the matter with you that you are divided into 2 parties concerning the hypocrites? 4.88 The Prophet said, "Medina expels the bad persons from it, as fire expels the impurities of iron." Sahih al-Bukhari 1884 reference 29 Hadith 18. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Anas. The Prophet said, "O Allah, bestow on Medina twice the blessings you bestowed on Mecca." Sahih al-Bukhari 1885 reference 29 Hadith 19. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Anas. Whenever the Prophet returned from a journey and observed the walls of Medina, he would make his mount go fast, and if he was on an animal, that is a horse, he would make it gallop because of his love for Medina. Sahih al-Bukhari 1886 reference 29 Hadith 20. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Anna's sad face. The people of Bani Salama intended to shift near the mosque of the Prophet. But Allah's messenger disliked to see Medina vacated and said, "O the people of Bani Salama, don't you think that you will be rewarded for your footsteps which you take towards the mosque?" So, they stayed at their old places. Sahih al-Bukhari 1887 reference 29 Hadith 21. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "There is a garden from the gardens of paradise between my house and my pulpit is on my lake fount, Al-Kawthar." Sahih al-Bukhari 1888 reference 29 Hadith 22. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Aisha. When Allah's messenger reached Medina, Abu Bakr and Bilal became ill. When Abu Bakr's fever got worse, he would recite this poetic verse, "Everybody is staying alive with his people, yet death is nearer to him than his shoelaces." And Bilal, when his fever deserted him, would recite, "Would that I could stay overnight in a valley wherein I would be surrounded by Idkir and Jalil, kinds of good-smelling grass. Would that one day I could drink the water of the Majana, and would that the 2 mountains, Shama and Tafel, would appear to me." The Prophet said, "O Allah, curse Shayba bin Rabia and Utbah bin Rabia and Umayyah bin Khalaf as they turned us out of our land to the land of epidemics." Allah's messenger then said, "O Allah, make us love Medina as we love Mecca or even more than that. O Allah, give blessings in our saw and our mud, measures symbolizing food, and make the climate of Medina suitable for us, and divert its fever towards Al-Jufa." Aisha added, "When we reached Sahih al-Bukhari 1889 reference 29 Hadith 23. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah Medina, it was the most unhealthy of Allah's lands, and the valley of Bathan, the valley of Medina, used to flow with impure colored water. Sahih al-Bukhari 1889 reference 29 Hadith 23. Sahih al-Bukhari, Virtues of Madinah narrated Zayd bin Aslam from his father. Umar said, "O Allah, grant me martyrdom in your cause, and let my death be in the city of your apostle." Sahih al-Bukhari 1890 reference 29 Hadith 24.